I'd like to welcome on the line with us USWA and TNA co-founder Jarrett. How are you doing?
Just fine. Glad to be here.
Now, we've got a bunch of people in our chat room and via email that have sent us in some questions. We're going to allow people to call in if they've got a question for you as well at 718-664-9835. But if you don't mind, let's go ahead and get started.
All right.
Now, growing up, were you a wrestling fan? If so, who'd you look up to?
A guy named Tex Riley was my favorite. I cheered for him every Tuesday night at the Hippodrome. I was kind of a different kid. I liked the bad guys, except for Tex. I loved the Fargos, Jackie and Don. I loved the Greens, Don and Al Green. And, of course, later on in life, I had a chance to work with these guys. And that was a really big deal for me to be from a fan sitting at ringside and then get to wrestle against and work in a business relationship with these guys that I looked up to so much.
Now, was wrestling your first career choice? If not, what was?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear that.
I said, was wrestling your first career choice? If not, what was?
We've got a bad connection. Was wrestling my first what?
Career choice.
Oh, no. No, I went to Peabody College to become a teacher, and when I started the interview process, I found out I was making as much in my part-time jobs as they paid teachers, which I thought was sinful. So I went to work for a bicycle manufacturing company as a purchasing agent. And up to that time, the wrestling business had just been like a part-time job, so I could make some money in the summers and while I was going to school.
Now, we actually have a caller on the line who has a question for you. Caller from the 706, you're on the line with Jarrett. Go ahead with your question.
I hate to shake things up, and I hope it's not too controversial. First, good evening, Mr. Jarrett.
And good evening.
I don't want to get rumors started, but I think you started them nationwide. People are talking. I'm surprised this wasn't their first question out of the gate. But is it true what I've heard all the way down here in Savannah, Georgia, and I want to be your manager if this is the case, but you stepping back in the ring with Jackie Fargo?
Yeah. I answered Jimmy Cornette's wife was kind of expressing her displeasure at all the people that would friend her on Facebook so they could ask Jimmy for a job. And so I wrote to her and said that I would just have to take a chance on her wrath because I wanted to ask Jimmy. I'd been talking to Fargo, and we wanted to get back into the ring as a tag team. And
Could you imagine the numbers on the ratings on Raw when you and Jackie Fargo stepped foot in the ring? Vince hadn't seen numbers like that since the 90s.
Well, I don't know how good a rating it would be, and of course, as you know, I just did it. I'm not sure I could climb through the ropes. But
come on now.
It got a lot of talk. A lot of people had a lot of fun with it. Somebody wrote that we could be the Gray Bombers.
Well, I just wanted to call and shout out to you. I know you started that as a joke, but now I'm thinking it could be a little more serious than you think. I think there's I'll tell you what, if anybody wants to take this thing seriously, get in touch, Jarrett, offer him the best deal imaginable, and we'll see if he jumps on the. I think Kenny Bolin says he wants to do it over at OVW.
Oh, well, yeah, Kenny, but, I don't know if Kenny would pay me enough. Do you think he's a shady character?
He would pay you, Jerry, he would pay you in coupons to the buffet over there at the Golden Corral.
All right, well, I like to get my money's worth.
Listen, when you come to Savannah, come see me. I'll just sit back and relax and listen. Thank you for everything you've done and continue to do, and can't wait to see what happens in the future because I know you're not done yet.
All right. Thank you for calling.
All right, we have one more caller on the air with us. Caller from the 978, you're on the air with Jerry. Jarrett, go ahead with your question.
Hey, JT, how you doing? Mr. Jarrett, my name's Mark. I actually had, this may be a three-part question. We'll try to keep it short. My first question is, and I hope I'm not getting too far into what you probably be talking about later, but when you did the co-promotion with Vince McMahon back in the early 90s, and you brought Vince in as a heel-type character, was there any kind of plans to have Vince actually participate in the ring?
Well, let me give you the backstory on that. I was working for Vince. That was, during the time of the government coming after him over steroid distribution.
Right.
And so in working with Vince, I made the comment one day at the risk of his wrath that I said, Vince, you should get in the ring because you are the most natural heel I've ever been around. And instead of him getting mad at me, he laughed. And he said, are you serious? And I said, yeah, I'm serious. You have natural heat, just the way you present yourself. I said, now I know.
Media, yeah.
I said, I know what a sweet guy you really are, but just the way you come across, you would draw a whole lot of money. And then, that opened up the conversation, and he said, I've always really wondered how it would be. So I said, look, you don't want to do it up here, but down in Memphis, we're kind of still a secret, and why don't you come down there and try your hand at it? And that's how it all got started. And Vince turned out to be one of the best talents I think our business has ever had.
Okay, great. And I guess the second part of my question was, when USWA was running hot again, early 90s and such, did the fans ever grow weary or get tired of the fact that it would always, they'd bring in a big name from WWE or such, and Lawler would drop the strap to them, and then eventually maybe be a month or two later, that it would always kind of be the same repeating cycle that Lawler would drop the strap, win the strap, drop the strap, win the strap. Did that ever, the fans ever get kind of tired of that fact, and did it ever hurt the USWA's business for knowing kind of in ahead what was going to happen?
Well, I'm not sure they knew in advance what would happen. I mean, our area of promotion had a history of changing the titles with some regularity. Now, the difference in us and today is we would always go back to the same people. In other words, Jerry Lawler was the, as everybody knows, basically the champion in our area. And he would lose it on occasion, but generally he would win it back. So, I mean, the only gauge we have in our business is at the box office. And the box office said that they did not get tired of it.
So the fans, they did not care. They wanted as much of Jerry Lawler being, the hero in that area. that no matter who Jerry Lawler went against, especially if it was a WWE guy, it would still draw a tremendous gate for you guys, and so it was always a fair bet to have Jerry Lawler in the main event, I'm guessing.
Yes. They, Jerry was kind of like the Dallas Cowboys to the city of Dallas. I mean, you know, he was our local hero, and you know, I don't think they got tired of him at all.
Okay, great. And I'm going to wrap this up. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Mr. Jarrett.
No, that's all right. Go ahead.
Okay, and I guess my last question is, we all know Jarrett is to your area like Flair is to the Carolinas, but about TNA, what do you think TNA's future is now? Do you think they can stand a chance as a national promotion, or as a lot of people think, do you think they maybe have to change the entire infrastructure of their company to maybe become a national player in terms of competing with Vince McMahon?
Well, here is my situation. I was talking in a business meeting earlier today, and during the break-in, they asked me, and I have a vested interest because I have 3 beautiful granddaughters that it would impact them very negatively if TNA went under. So when I say my prayers, I hope for them to turn things around and survive. With that being said, I am surprised at their survival this long with their business philosophy. And so, you know, I hope they turn it around so that they will survive. I don't know if they will or not. It's not a business model that I think, if I had an opportunity to go in business again or start another company, it's certainly not the business model that I would use.
All right, great. Thank you, Mr. Jarrett. Thank you. I'm sorry. Again, I'm cutting you off. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I hope that isn't skirting your question.
Oh, you absolutely did. Absolutely did. And I think maybe, you know, with the talent that they have, they could really get something going. But like I said, I think maybe, you know, they just have to make some very important, you know, office moves. And I think they could be a good wrestling promotion because we definitely need an alternative to what WWE is doing now. And thank you, Mr. Jarrett, and thank you, JT, for having me on, and I appreciate everything.
Thank you for calling.
Okay, we'll get a little bit more into TNA a little bit later as well. Now, early in your career, Jerry, we were talking about him a few minutes ago, you teamed with the fabulous Jackie Fargo. What were your feelings on Jackie then, and has your relationship changed at all over the years?
I saw Jackie in the Carolinas. I went to a fan fest kind of thing, and Jackie and I, it's exactly like that we were in the Memphis dressing room the week before, except we're both, you know, old-timers now. But, no, I love Jackie. He's a great human being. I owe a lot of the success that I've had in this business to him.
Okay. And you were actually one of the first wrestlers to ever compete in a scaffold match. You know, what were your thoughts going into the scaffold match for the very first time?
I was watching television one night, late at night. I couldn't sleep. You know, I don't know if I was thinking about business or what it was. But anyway, I was up real late at night. And I guess you'd call it a C movie. It was 2 notches below an A movie was on. and it was these warriors fighting in a very hokey movie, but they were doing combat. It was like gladiators, and they fought out on this tree that had fallen across a big gorge, and the camera showed down, you know, and it was very scary, and they, you know, they fought with their swords, and finally the good guy knocked the bad guy off, and I said, you know, that would be a heck of a wrestling match. So I started talking to people about it, and I couldn't get anybody to do it. So I said, well, shoot, I'll do it. You know, it'll draw a big house. And back in those days, I was very motivated to draw a sellout, so I just did it myself. I talked Don Green into it.
Oh, wow, so you actually came up with the concept of the scaffold match.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I was the promoter.
Oh, wow. Because whenever I think of a scaffold match, I think of, you know, Road Warriors and Midnight Express from the mid-'80s.
No, this was long before then.
Right, yeah.
The first one was in Louisville, Kentucky, and it was between me and Don Green.
Wow, that's interesting. I didn't know that. Now, you promoted several promotions in the Mid-South territory. Which one of them was your favorite to be with, or did you have a favorite?
Well, you know, we had different names at different times over the years, but it was really all the same promotion. You know, we were under the NWA banner, and then, you know, that organization begun to deteriorate as territories and offices closed, and I could never get them to do business with me as far as Jerry Lawler and the title. So I, for a while, was CWA, and then I formed an alliance with Vern Gagne at AWA, and then we became USWA when I bought Levon Eric's world-class territory. And we branched out. We became USWA.
Okay, so
but it was always the same promotion.
So the same territory, the name just changed a few times. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, we just, you know, when we took over Dallas, we spread out our wings away, but it was still the same promotion.
Okay, now you were speaking about Jerry Lawler a few minutes ago. I just wanted to get your feelings on Jerry Lawler, and you know he's had a lot of legal issues over the years. Do you feel he was targeted because of his notoriety and his fame in the Memphis area?
Yeah, and you know I can figure out why I'm having such trouble hearing, but Jerry Lawler, I consider, and if I didn't hear your question right, just interrupt me. I consider the most talented individual that I ever worked with. And I worked with some of the great ones. Everything from Hogan to Sting to Ultimate Warrior to Randy Savage. And Jerry, to me, of that group, had the most all-around talent. He could have a match in the ring with a broomstick. You could give him 3 bullet points, and he would go out and give an interview that sold out the Mid-South Coliseum or Louisville Gardens or the Evansville Coliseum or you know, the Nashville Fairgrounds Coliseum Arena. He was money when he got on the microphone. And then he could back it up with a great match so that I could book returns for a month. And that's how I felt then when I was booking it, and now in retrospect, you know, that's how I feel. Now, there were a lot of great talents, but if you had to make a list, he would be at the top of my list.
Okay, now, speaking of Jerry Lawler, One of the most famous feuds in the history of the wrestling business was a feud Jerry Lawler had with the late Andy Kaufman in the Memphis area. Do you have any memories of the late Andy Kaufman you'd like to share?
No, other than that little program has taken on a life of its own. And the truth of the matter is that, it was a little novelty promotion that we did here in the territory. But, Andy was well connected, and so him getting on the David Letterman show, it took on a life of its own, but it was just a novelty thing. I did the same thing with Joe Louis, and different people throughout the years. We would try to rub shoulders with people that were stars in things other than wrestling, and but Andy is a swell guy. He loved the wrestling business with a passion that those of us who have spent our whole lifetime in it have. It was always a dream of his to be in the wrestling business, and he was appreciative that we gave him that opportunity. And of course, I was appreciative that the content of his character was such that he loved the business and was good at it.
Okay, now, who do you feel are some of the most overrated and alternatively some of the more underrated wrestlers that have worked for you over the years?
Oh, yeah, I don't know. I look at talent a lot different than I guess most people do. Just about everybody can play themselves. Hulk Hogan plays Hulk Hogan. Or maybe I said Terry Bollea plays Hulk Hogan because he's playing himself. Dusty Rhodes is Dusty Rhodes, and Ric Flair is Ric Flair, and Jerry Lawler is Jerry Lawler. Most wrestlers that are superstars play themselves. And with rare exceptions. And one of those exceptions is a guy named Handsome Jimmy Babbitt. I don't know if you ever heard of him. But Jimmy is nothing. Doesn't resemble his character that he plays so well in the ring. Jimmy is an introverted, quiet, easygoing, bashful guy. But he's able to walk through the curtain and become the boogie woogie man. It's the damnedest thing I ever saw in 40 years in this business. So I guess Jimmy is, if Jimmy had been in the movies, he would have played a dozen different roles because he can truly play a role. All the other great wrestlers just play themselves. And that's good.
Now, we actually have another caller this time. The caller's from the 978. Caller, you're on the air with Jerry. Jarrett, go ahead with your question.
Hey, JT, I'm sorry. It's Mark again. Hi, Mr. Jarrett. I called in a few minutes ago. I didn't want to hog up too much time, but every once in a while I get to spend time with the Iron Sheik, and he tells me stories about back in the 70s, I'd imagine probably the mid-70s, that Elvis Presley used to come down to the Coliseum, I believe, and to watch some of the matches, and he actually told me a story one time about him, Jerry Jarrett, and a few of the other boys. I'm sorry, not Jerry Jarrett, I apologize. Jerry Lawler and a few of the other boys actually were invited back to Graceland to hang out with Elvis Presley and such. Do you have any kind of cool stories or any recollection of Elvis Presley coming to the wrestling shows?
Yeah, that was not at the Mid-South Coliseum. The wrestling used to be held at Cook Convention Center.
Okay.
And that's when I first broke into the business. And at Cook Convention Center, there was a stage, and there was a back theater. In other words, the stage was kind of in the middle. And Elvis was a wrestling fan, and he would come and on occasion, 2 or 3 times, and sit back there in the dark and look across the stage out into the arena. You know, I met Red and some of his crew. I met him. And what was funny at the time is I don't guess any of us thought anything about it. I mean, you know, here's a rock and roller that likes wrestling, and a lot of them did. I mean, in Nashville, you know, Fargo was buddies and card-playing buddies and gambling buddies and drinking buddies and who knows what else kind of buddies with about everybody that was in the business. But, yes, as far as going back to Graceland and all that, I don't know. I never went. I can't say they did or didn't. But I can say, because I met him, that he came to the Cook Convention Center on 2 or 3 occasions.
All right, cool. Thanks.
But so did Muhammad Ali.
Oh, great. All right, thanks again, Mr. Jarrett.
Okay.
All right, now, Mr. Jarrett, this is JT again. I have another question for you. Do you have any memories of the recently departed Skandar Akbar?
Yes. When I bought the World Class promotion, Skandar was out there, and you know, when you're the new kid coming in on the block, it's real easy to go through I don't know what's the term I can use that's politically correct, but it's, you know, it's the bullshit period where, you know, people tell you the way they want the world to be and not the way it really is. And Skandar Akbar was a great help to me during this difficult time of my life, and he really helped point out to me, this guy has talent, and this guy will BS you, and this guy's got a coke problem, and this guy does this, and he made the transition, because I mean, it was dead, it was in bankruptcy. And it took us, thanks to Skandar, leading and pushing me in the right direction. I think we had our first full house in like 8 weeks from bankruptcy. And Skandar, of course, was a tremendous talent as a manager. But he was one of the real decent people in this business. Really first class.
We actually did a tribute radio show not too long ago for him. Now, you got to work with also the late Owen Hart. Do you have any memories of working with him at all?
Yeah. Owen was a prince of a guy. The whole Hart family, you know, I knew Stu Hart from the NWA days. And, you know, I knew the whole family, and so it was just, you know, it was a pleasure working with them. I got to work with both Brett and Owen when I was at WWE, and we did the Cain and Abel program that, you know, they pulled off the two brothers, it was magic. And I think really that program with Owen help establish Brett and contributed to him being the star that he turned out to be.
Now, you were, of course, the co-founder of TNA. What was the initial concept behind the company?
Oh, well, that is a real complicated story that probably would take a book to fully explain it. I had a concept, and Jeff, I later discovered, had a very, very different concept. And that's what led to a lot of our problems and ultimately led to me getting out of the business. I wanted to, an investment group in Boston was going to put up $70 million for me to buy WCW. And I felt like that it could make a lot of money and be turned around really quicker than World Class was turned around. And as everybody knows the story, that didn't happen. They folded the company. Vince bought the library, and it ceased to be. I did some extensive research in that period, and I knew the numbers backwards and forwards at the rating. And when WCW closed, they had a consistent 3.2 television rating. Consistent. Vince McMahon, on average, now I know WCW beat them for 18 weeks or something, months or whatever. But overall, Vince had about 3/10 of a rating point higher than WCW. So the last week that both shows ran, they had a combined 7 rating. The week after, Vince had almost a 7. The week after that, Vince went back to his 3.4 rating, and the WCW fans disappeared. Just vanished. So I know that the aliens didn't come down in spaceship and suck up all the old school wrestling fans or the WCW fans. So I knew they were still out there. And most people that you talk to, and I can just ask you, how many people do you run into that say, I wish wrestling was the way it used to be?
I hear it all the time.
Do you ever?
Workers.
Okay. My philosophy with TNA was that we would try to capture with believable wrestling. And believable, it's really wrestling that allows the fan to suspend their disbelief for an hour and a half or 2 hours. And so that was my goal. That was my motivation for getting back in the business. And unfortunately, and I didn't realize this till after the fact, Jeff was greatly influenced, even from the time we conceived the company, by Vince Russo. And Vince Russo wanted to be WWE. Of course, he didn't have the money, didn't have the resources, and didn't have Vince McMahon, so he couldn't be it. But my goal was to have a reincarnation of the old school WCW wrestling. Now, a lot of people mistake WCW in the last dying throes. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the WCW before Russo and all that era went down there. I'm talking about back when, and I can't remember the years, but the original WCW. From the time Jimmy Crockett sold it to Turner until, say, the pre-Bischoff era.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
And that didn't happen. I believe with all of my heart that because I cannot go anywhere that people don't come up and say to me, I know you're not with TNA anymore. Do you ever wish for the wrestling it used to be in Memphis? I said, of course I do. That was my passion. I believe that anytime there is great demand for a product, that somebody somewhere will feel that demand. And I think that there will be somebody start a wrestling company, and I think they'll be successful. And maybe that's just wishful thinking, but I don't think so.
I don't think it's wishful thinking at all. I mean,
no, I believe that someday, because for one thing, the old school wrestling is very much alive. All you have to do is go out to a dozen independent matches and see. I went to a wrestling match that a fellow put on here in Nashville, and it's a little bitty building, and he only had 200 fans in the building, and the guys, and I don't mean this derogatory, but they did not look like. I mean, they wouldn't even get a dark match at TNA or WWE. They didn't have the physiques. They didn't have the looks. All they could do was wrestle. And they went out there, and the people stood up for 2 hours and did not sit down, screaming. And I have a hearing aid to help me hear. I had to take it off and turn it off. I mean, this little building they were in, 200 people, and they screamed their lungs out for 2 hours. And I thought, that's the way it used to be in Memphis. And it's still that way. We drew 10,000 people, and they got 200. But if somebody gets this exposed, they can have 2,000 and then maybe 10,000.
Now, Jerry, what do you feel has been TNA's biggest accomplishment thus far?
What do I feel? What
do you feel has been TNA's biggest accomplishment so far?
Longevity. They're still alive. I don't think that they have. I don't know of. And I've gone for so long and hadn't even watched it, so it's really hard for me to pass judgment. But when I was there, we developed some guys like AJ Styles and Low-Key and Jerry Lynn and they became, box office, nationally known talent. And I don't know that they've built anybody since then. Have they?
No, not really. They're mostly bringing in the ex-WWE stars at this point.
Well, but I mean, whatever notoriety they have, Vince did that. I'm talking about taking an unknown wrestler and turning him into a box office star. Do you know of any? I don't know.
No,
I'm seriously asking.
No, they haven't really done a lot of the developing stars since the time where you were there, and those guys were increased. Actually, you mentioned Loki, and he recently he is now in WWE. What are your thoughts on that?
He is in WWE?
Yes.
Yeah, I loved him from the first time I saw him. He is a tough kid, a great wrestler, and a decent human being. I really like him.
Great. Now, a lot of people actually say that you helped them get signed to WWE based on a lot of the guidance you gave them when they were coming up to the business. What do you feel, or who do you feel that you've helped most in their career to try and develop?
Oh, I don't know. Just about everybody that came through Memphis. I can go back and, naturally you point to people like Hogan and Sting and Ultimate Warrior and Randy Savage, Jerry Lawler, Coco Ware, Flyboy Frazier. I don't know. It can just go on and on and on. The Moondogs. For a while there, it was everybody that was on the WWE roster.
Is there anyone that you looked at in Memphis and looked at them and said to yourself, I don't think they have it, and they turned out to be a pretty big success in the wrestling business? Has there ever been a situation like that?
Oh, absolutely. Sting and Ultimate Warrior came to California. There was 4 of them originally, and 2 of them, went home. They didn't have the perseverance to stick it out. But those 2 stayed. One night we was at the back of the Mid-South Coliseum, and Steve walked over to me and he said, Mr. Jarrett, do you think we're going to make it in this business? And I said, well, you got a long way to go. And he said, no, be honest with us. Do you think we're going to make it? And I said, well, if you were my son, I'd tell you to go back to California and get a real job. No, I don't think you're going to make it. and of course, you know the story. Sting went on to be one of the biggest stars the business has ever known. Ultimate Warrior, he was a big star for a little while.
Yeah, for a little while. Now, back to TNA. Earlier this year, TNA went head-to-head with WWE on Monday nights. They actually kind of hurt themselves in the ratings in the process. Now, there are 2 schools of thought on this. One of them, which is actually the one that I subscribe to, is that they should have tried to stay kind of without competing and sort of use what brought them there. A lot of the X Division things that really that you promoted when you were with TNA. But it seems like they really want to just compete with WWE and try to take them over. What are your thoughts on this? Because it really did turn out that their ratings have gotten and stayed lower since that failed incident.
Well, if I had have made a promotional blunder to that magnitude, I would go to South America to never be seen again. I can't even comprehend that they sat down and listened to Bischoff and Hogan and let them talk them in to that. It made a laughing stock out of them. You're being nice saying, it didn't work. It was the war that nobody came to. And it's insane. It's beyond being stupid. It's just insane. Why would you pick a fight with a giant? And it's crazy. And to add insult to injury, I did follow it during that time just because I was amazed. To add insult to injury, Vince didn't even react to it. Did you notice that? He didn't do anything. If anything, he downplayed his cards.
Right.
And isn't that what you saw?
Yeah, because their shows, especially, it was really odd because that was also one of their biggest times of the year for WWE because it was while they were leading up to WrestleMania, and their shows were actually pretty subpar during that time.
Yeah, that's what I mean. So that, Vince, I'm sure, laughed at it. They're just, I don't know. I can't imagine the blunder. And it hurts me because I really worry about Jeff keeping a source of income.
Right. Now we have a caller calling in. So, caller from the 503, you're on the air with Jerry Jarrett.
Good evening, guys. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Hello?
Yes, so you are on the air.
My question for Jerry was, what are some of the biggest problems that he sees with the world of professional wrestling today?
What did I see as the biggest problem?
Yeah, just to name a
Was that
few.
the
What are
question?
your
I'm
humble
sorry.
opinion?
Yes. Well, if you took and abolished college football, it's not hard to visualize that the NFL would be lacking. And if you don't see it as much because there's only WWE really that's out there presenting a product, and TNA on a much smaller level. But if you had wrestling to the degree and the number of events that were going on when the territory system was in, I mean, everybody would go belly up because of talent. Now, I am amazed and have no idea where all this independent talent has come from. I guess they just get out there and wrestle and for gas money or for free and because they love the business and they've watched old tapes. I don't know how to account for it. But I do know that I was amazed at TNA that I would show up to the arena and there would be 20 wrestlers rehearsing in the ring. And I was just astounded. I couldn't imagine rehearsing wrestling. And Jeff explained to me, he said, the days of ring generals and people knowing what they're doing out there are long gone. That's dead. Nobody does it anymore. They have to rehearse the moves or they don't know how to have a match. And the reason for that is they don't have the feeder system that the territories produce these wrestlers by the hundreds. And so I really think that Vince does a great job from getting kids out of these schools and turning them into sports entertainment stars.
All right, thank you so much for calling in today, caller. Now, Jerry, Uncle Jimbo from our chat room has a question. He was asking, what do you feel is needed to launch another company to do what TNA was originally supposed to do, to serve as a true alternative?
Well, you have to sit down, of course, and find an investor or a group of investors you'd have to assemble a team that knew what they were doing and had some experience, and you would have to produce a pilot product and sell it to a network. And once you did those steps, you just need to be real sure that the people that were in the creative end of the business had the same vision and passion that we're all talking about. You know, you don't want to see. The one thing I really respect Vince McMahon about is he says, "I'm not the wrestling business. I'm sports entertainment." So really, there is no company out there that's the wrestling business. I guess the closest to it is Ring of Honor. But there's them and all the other independents is the only real wrestling business that's alive. But I predict that there will be an investor and there will be a group of knowledgeable people come together and they really will produce a product.
Okay. Now we have another caller on the line. So caller from the 978, you're on the air with Jarrett.
Yeah, Jerry, it's me again. Yeah, Teresa Charm. You just meant the last thing you just said was that you predict that there will be a group of investors and there will be another promotion. Now, Ring of Honor has what they call pure wrestling. WWE has sports entertainment. TNA has much to the same degree sports entertainment, pro wrestling. Now with the fact that there's MMA out there, mixed martial arts, that is kind of influencing, I guess, in a way, the genre of pro wrestling. What is that next promotion? What are they going to have to offer? What are they going to have to offer to actually become viable in today's, in the climate of today's wrestling, sports, entertainment scene? What do they have to do to make themselves stand out and to actually become a profitable company?
Okay. Believe it or not, I've given that a lot of thought just lately. Did you watch the movie Rocky? When
I watched all the
Rocky, Apollo Creed? Okay. That's one of my favorite movies of all time. And the reason it is the first time I saw it, I was at the theater. And when Apollo Creed was just beating the dog out of Rocky, I thought, oh, man, this is going to be a terrible movie. He's going to get hurt. And then all of a sudden, Rocky started making a comeback. And everybody in the theater stood up and cheered like if their team had just won the World Championship, the Super Bowl. And that is the essence of old school wrestling. Because what that film did, it allowed everybody in the theater to take their mind off of the fact that it was staged and there was lights and there was cuts and edits. They were able to suspend their disbelief that it was real. They were able to take that and put it over here on the shelf. And so, in the moment, the fight between Rocky and Apollo Creed was real. And that's what we did back in the old territory days. I don't think there was, of course there were a few, but I don't think there was many people that really thought that when Jerry Lawler pulled his strap down and went to beating up the big giant that had just beat him all over the ring, or when Dusty Rhodes did his big elbow drop, or when Hulk Hogan dropped his leg. I don't believe anybody really believed that match was a shoot. I think they were able to suspend disbelief. Does that make any sense to you?
Absolutely it does. In fact, I wanted to ask you, what is the last professional wrestling match that you watched? For me, it was Ric Flair versus Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania 24, I believe. But for you, what is the last pro wrestling match that you watched where you actually saw, you of course, you being around the business forever, that you watched and you said, you know, oh my God, you know, this is a story to tell. And this is Rocky versus Apollo, that conveyed that kind of emotion, that kind of passion, where you know it's predetermined, but you really just kind of left your inhibitions and you kind of put your heart into it. What was the last wrestling match that you saw that gave you that kind of feeling?
Yeah, I really, that's when I can relate to you. Do you remember, or did you remember hearing about Eddie Graham, in the Florida promoter?
From Florida, yeah, Eddie Graham, of course.
Yeah. All right, Eddie was one of the great promoters of my time. And Eddie was the promoter of Jack Briscoe. And I was the promoter of Lawler. And we had a long program that built up to Jerry Lawler and Jack Briscoe. And I think there were 11,400 people at the Mid-South Coliseum. The fire marshal was screaming at me. But anyway, it was packed and it was electrical. And Eddie and I were standing at the back of the Mid-South Coliseum watching the match. And I got emotional and started crying. So I was kind of embarrassed that, you know, us macho wrestling promoters are not supposed to, you know, men aren't supposed to cry anyway. And I was caught up with emotion, and so I looked over and here is big tears running down Eddie Graham's face.
So as a credit to the, I'm sorry, but as a credit to both of the guys in the ring with that build-up, and to have two people who ultimately know, you know, that it's what's going to happen. They were, you know, that's such a credit. Like you said, you don't see guys like that build this, you know, that kind of emotion. And you saw that, and as a promoter, as, you know, gilded as you are in the wrestling business, that is definitely a lost talent, because you can see it in the movies with directors directing these people. And I would totally love to see that again in pro wrestling on pay-per-view. Again, the last thing I saw that was when Shawn Michaels was crying his eyes out. The film, you know, they did a close-up and he mouthed, "I'm sorry, I love you," and he kicked Ric Flair. We need more of that.
Yes. Well, see, Shawn is one of the last of the great wrestlers. And he knows how to have a match. And you know what happens to a talent when you're in the ring? They go to believing it too. And that's the factor that makes a good match become a great, memorable match. The talent goes to believing it himself. I mean, you know, it's really, really hard. In the movies, they use teardrops and onions and everything else to make somebody cry. It's really hard for a wrestler to cry unless he's actually feeling the emotion. And I'm sure Shawn felt that emotion. I'm sure that something that Shawn was able to in the moment, make it become real to me. And, that's what I love about this business, and that's what I so miss about it. And I really hope that it will come back one day.
Okay, Mark, thank you so much for calling in tonight. Now, Jerry, we received another question in our chat room. DJ Kevin Lee wanted your opinion on what you feel is the best gimmick ever in the wrestling business. Kamala, the Ugandan giant. If I'm not mistaken, you guys created him in Memphis, is that right?
Yes. I mean, and naturally I'm going to, be self-serving because I did it. But what I know is that Sugar Bear Harris was a very, very limited wrestler. He absolutely could not throw a punch. I mean, it was horrible. It was the worst punch that I'd ever seen. And so I told him, I said, what you have going for you is your size and your size and your size. And he looked at me and he said, nothing else? I said, no, you're horrible at everything else. You can't make an interview. And Kamala drew sellout business everywhere he went because he took my advice and never threw a punch his entire career. He would chop, slap, didn't try to wrestle, just fought, and that takes charisma to draw money when you can't wrestle. Did you ever see Kamala?
Oh yeah, I saw him plenty of times, and everything you're saying is totally right. Something I always thought about him.
Yeah, the original Sheik was a great talent. The Iron Sheik, Ali Basari, my friend, was a great gimmick.
We received another question in our chat room from Uncle Jimbo. He just wanted to get your thoughts on, if you had any thoughts on Bryan Danielson.
Who?
Bryan Danielson, who's one of the hot young.
Oh, yes. I think he's a terrific talent. I don't know him personally, but I've seen a couple of his matches.
Okay, now back to what we were talking about earlier with TNA. What are your thoughts on Dixie Carter, both as a person and her management style?
Oh, I'll pass on that.
I'm definitely no Dixie Carter supporter, so.
My mama told me if you can't say something good about somebody, don't say anything at all.
Okay. You sure you don't want to say anything? That's open forum here.
No, I mean, I don't. What is there to say? I don't. I think that I don't like anything about Dixie's business management style. I don't think she's has a clue what this business is about. And I don't really know her as a person. So my opinion is strictly, and I will make that clear, is strictly from observing her up close when I was there and from a distance in business. I'm sure she's a fine mother, a fine person, a fine wife, a fine daughter. But I just don't know. I mean, I don't know her. We were never social friends.
So you never really worked really closely with her during your time in TNA?
No.
Okay, that was the impression you had.
No.
My general feeling is that, with her position, her running a company with the publicity that it does, all the time she spends on the Twitter and the Facebook and those kind of letting everyone know what's happening behind the scenes, that's kind of letting everyone in a little bit too much is my general opinion on that.
Oh, I don't, that's getting into the minutia of it. I don't like her, the big picture business. So, if I don't get past there, how do I get to whether she writes on Twitter or not?
Right, okay. Now, do you have any thoughts you'd like to share on with Jeff Jarrett so far as how he's running the business? And, do you still have a good relationship with him?
Oh, no, we don't. We haven't talked since I left TNA. We don't have any relationship. And I don't know what his position is there. I don't have a clue.
Okay, that's because you were speaking of your granddaughters earlier, so I was.
Well, yes. Now I have a relationship with them, and I want them to have a fruitful, good life. You love your grandchildren. And you're always concerned about their well-being and so that's the reason I hope, if TNA were to close the doors, I don't know where Jeff would make a living. He's burned a bridge with Vince, and so from that standpoint of how the girls would fare, is a concern of mine. Otherwise, it doesn't matter to me.
Okay. Now, do you have a rib or a road story that you'd like to share with our listeners?
Do I have what?
Like a rib or a road story that you were part of or that you were aware of that you'd like to share with our listeners?
No, I don't know. Let me see. I've told so many of them. Fargo, that's kind of nasty. Well, anyway, you can use your imagination. Fargo had a coordination test for all the green guys that came into the business. And he would tell them, he would stand, and I would stand in front of him, and he'd draw a circle on the wall, and he would put his hand out behind him and point his finger, and walk backwards, and I would say left, right, up, or down, and he could hit right in the middle of the circle that he'd drawn. And he and I had done this little routine 100 times. Inevitably, after about the third time, the green kid would say, "What are y'all doing?" And Fargo would say, "We're going to have the commissioner's coming tonight. He's going to give coordination test." And the guy said, "Coordination test?" And he said, "Yeah, you better be able to hit the target behind you from instructions. Because, people are talking in the ring. You can hurt somebody if you can't follow directions." Guy said, "No, kid, what if you fail it?" "Well, you don't get to wrestle." So Jackie would say, "Here, when I get through one more time, I'll let you practice." So the guy then would get up there, and he's real serious, and I'd be directing him. Fargo would drop his pants and bend over, and you can imagine what happened when the guy got to the wall. And it would embarrass him, and all the other guys would laugh and tell him what a goof he was. So, it was just kind of like the initiation. That's one of them. There were, it was just, the wrestling business is glamorous for about an hour a day. That's if you're working every night. The rest of the time is spent in cars or airports or airplanes and in a dressing room, putting your boots on and taking them off. For some people, the excitement is 10 minutes out in the ring or 10 minutes on camera. But the other 24 23 hours and 50 minutes of the wrestling business is kind of boring. So the guys end up with creative ways to entertain themselves. And that's the reason there's so many ribs in the business. Jokes, pranks, you know, everything from nailing a guy's shoes to a wooden floor. One guy used to buy handcuffs and would handcuff somebody's bag to a pipe in the dressing room. Crazy stuff.
Yeah, definitely. Now, we have one final question that was sent in to us from one of our listeners. And you want to know what's next for you. Will we see you inside the wrestling business and what's new outside? And do you have any projects in the work you'd like to tell the fans about?
Well, you know, never say never. I don't know. A few years ago I said never. You know, it was a traumatic experience, my TNA experience, but that burnout has subsided. If the right opportunity came along again, I'd give it some real consideration if all the elements were right. I am working on two little projects. One is a reality show, and my partner is Mark Wolper with the Wolper organization out in Los Angeles, and that's the reality thing that we're working on, television show. The other exciting thing that I'm working on is with John Corcoran in Boston. They're the fellas that put up the money to try to buy WCW. And I'm blessed that he likes me and the wrestling business. We're working on a portal for all of the independent wrestling, hopefully in the world. And in that portal would be chat rooms and message boards. For those fans who don't understand the difference between a portal and a website, WWE has a website and Facebook is a portal. A portal has diversity where somebody in England can immediately communicate with somebody in Philadelphia. And you can stream video and you can upload pictures. And so it's very, very interactive. So if there was a wrestling portal, this radio show could be accessed through that portal. And where you have your biggest job is getting people to know that you're out there. And so you can use Facebook and you can use this, that, and the other. If there was a portal where everybody came to for anything independent wrestling, you could be exposed to a lot more people. And so you would be able to upload your radio show at no charge, and then fans could tune in live while it was going on, or they could save it and listen to it later. Every independent television show, we're going to give them the opportunity to put it on, and in real time, people can watch it. So that's a real exciting project.
Okay, great. And yeah, when those get closer to completion, definitely let us know, and we'll be sure to plug that on our website.
Well, right now they're working on the technical end of it.
Right.
And it's quite an undertaking, and it's the reason it hasn't been done is very, very expensive. But that's what they're doing. As soon as they get the structure will start seeking content.
Definitely. Now, Mr. Jarrett, I definitely want to thank you for coming on and being so candid with us.
Well, I've enjoyed it. I appreciate you fellas because you're straight shooters, and that harkens back to the old territory days where when somebody told you something, they did it, and y'all were straightforward and honest, and I appreciate that, and I'm glad. I appreciate you having me on.
Well, again, we just want to thank you for coming on, and we definitely feel that we're going to ask questions, definitely get some good, honest answers. And again, thank you so much for your time.